Good day, everybody. I am the original gamer, StevieStrow, and I am joined with two special guests. Beneath me are Curtis Boyle of the Color Computers Games List and Nick Marentes, the
Hello,
man
everyone.
from Down Under. And we are doing a special presentation for you here today. We are going to be showing you a showcase of several different color computer games that use a very unique mode that was known as the Semigraphics mode. And just real quickly, I'll tell you my take on this, and we have some experts with us here. But here's the thing about the color computer, right? It was made by Radio Shack. The TRS-80 computer started off kind of black and white. And so your Model 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s were all black and white computers. So they made this computer called the Color Computer. And for the most part, the Color Computer, when we got into graphics, only gave us about 4 colors. And they weren't always a great choice of 4 colors. There was one mode that offered 9 colors, but it was a very low resolution mode. It was pretty much like our text graphics mode. It had about 64 columns of graphics. And then there were different modes that gave us up to about 192 lines of graphics with 9 colors that we could also combine text with. And this mode was known as a semi-graphics mode because it was somewhat text, it was somewhat graphical, it wasn't anything near high resolution, but it was the most colorful-tastic mode the color computer could produce. And there were a number of games. There was roughly, what do you think, Curtis, about a dozen or so? About a dozen games that really use this well for the CoCo. And another interesting tech fact here, that this mode is only really properly supported on the Color Computer 1 and 2 because the Color Computer 3 has a different graphics chip that cannot fully reproduce the mixture of graphics and text. That's my 3.5 cents on that. I will let the experts chime in as well. And then what should I go ahead and fire up Neutroid while we're talking about it so they can see it as well?
Sure, because I believe the title screen actually is in Semigraphics too, isn't it, Nick?
Yes, and so we are lucky enough to have Nick Marentes with us here, who actually made this game. And so this is what actually Semigraphics looks like, right? It looks pretty good. I believe most people look at this and say it looks very similar to an Atari 2600 game. I think Curtis and I would argue that it actually looks better because it's a higher resolution and it even has real text instead of graphics text in here. And I'll shut up now.
To be honest, I will let Nick explain this because he knows the technical details, obviously, from programming it, and he's used it a lot more than I have. So I will let him explain what it is, what the advantages and disadvantages of it are, and why he picked it for Neutroid II.
I'll give it a shot anyway. As you can see on that title screen, it looked very much, even this, it looks like very much like the text screen. Now, the screen we're looking at now currently is a normal text screen. It was the title screen was showing the semi-graphics, and it looks very similar. You can show all the usual graphic objects in 8 colors as well as text. Here it comes now. So you can see it's much finer, but it has a finer vertical resolution, but the horizontal resolution is still just the same as it is in normal text mode. So, and there's various semi-graphics modes. They start from a really low res vertical res to the highest res, whereby each scan line is a horizontal pixel. So, I think the maximum is 192 vertical pixels, but the maximum horizontal is actually around 64. So it still is quite coarse in that direction, and it just means that any games that require scrolling, the scrolling horizontal will be a little jerky still, but vertical it can be done so it's very smooth. Now, semi-graphics, what is semi-graphics and why did I choose the semi-graphics mode as my first game when I first purchased my Tandy Color Computer? Now, the Tandy Color Computer, as most CoCo users know, in graphics mode is a little bit more restricted in the number of colors. The resolution is good, but the number of colors is reduced to either 4 colors with 2 color sets. In other words, each color set can only have 4 colors, and the 4 colors set to be the same in each color set. So games always tend to look very similar, very similar for colors, and the border color of the screen was always one of the two colors in each color set, which is the either a green or a white. The other mode, of course, is a higher resolution mode, but then you get dropped down to two colors, black and white, with a white border. Now, I always, when I first purchased the color computer, I never liked those modes. I mean, I'm well known on the Facebook page as someone who doesn't like the 6847 video chip, primarily because of the limitations of the color. It's ironical that the color computer, its biggest weakness was color. So,
yes.
That's right. I always found that limiting. A good programming could make those good use of those modes. We saw artifacting in the higher black and white res modes, but it's still only largely 4 colors, and most games have a very similar look. Whereas at the time, the color computer was competing against other computers like the VIC-20 or the Commodore 64s and all that, and they did tend to have more colors on the screen. They may have had other limitations like resolution and all that, but the colors were more flexible. So they always did appeal to me over the Tandy color computer. So I wanted to stay with the color computer. I was a TRS-80 Model 1 programmer, so I was very much a Tandy person back then. And when I migrated eventually to a color system, the color computer didn't grab me. It didn't seem like the best move into a color computer. And I was looking at various other brands, but in the end I came back home to Tandy, and especially when I read up a bit about it and discovered that it had this Semigraphics mode. Now, Semigraphics is whereby it's not really a proper graphics mode. It's a sort of a combination of the text mode and it makes it act like a bit like a graphics mode, or at least to allow a higher resolution, in this case vertically. So, but the big advantage was the fact that one, the border was black. You couldn't change that. It was always black, which is fine. That is a good color to have as a border color. It allows the border to disappear completely, but it also allows 8 colors in the center area of the screen, making the game more colorful and breaking away from that 4-color games look. And at the time, there was we're talking early 80s. There was programs like Steve Bjorg's Spectrum Analyzer program, which was a program, not a game, but it allowed you to input an audio source into the color computer, and it would graphically represent in vertical bar graphs all the different frequencies, and it utilized Semigraphics, and it had a black background, it had colored bars, it looked very, as I call it, un-CoCo-ish. And it was great. I thought, well, why aren't all games like this? Then I started looking more into the Semigraphics modes. I discovered a few programs that did use it, and the one that did get me was one called Guardian, which is a Defender clone.
Yeah, we played it.
I think you've reviewed it. And the thing I liked about it was the fact that it was, not only very colourful, but it was also quite a good rendition of Defender. It was well written as well. And that stuck in me. It showed that Semigraphics, or its lower horizontal resolution, could still be made to play good games if a game is written right, and would certainly stand out. So I got to work on Neutroid, which I had written on the TRS-80 Model 1, It wasn't too hard a game, so I thought that this might be a good game to use for my introduction, my first attempt at a TRS-80 Color Computer game, and also the movement of the graphics seemed to sort of coincide with the limitations, the horizontal resolution limitations of Semigraphics mode. So I wrote Neutroid, and as an extra, I also wanted to have good sound, and I was a fan of all the action arcade type games. So the vision was to not only have a game that actually shows color on the color computer, but also make it very much an arcadey game, very fast paced, and lots of noise. Lots of good quality noise as well, not just beeps and buzzers like
the sound is great.
So that was the motivation, and of course what you see before you is the fruits of those results. Unfortunately, it is a very hard game, and it wasn't really that popular in the time, but that was just a gameplay thing, nothing to do with the semi-graphics itself.
Right.
It was just a very abstract idea, the moving atomic particles on a atomic nuclear grid, shooting other atomic particles. All that was, what the hell is he talking about? Forget.
It seems so commonplace nowadays, though.
Yeah, that's right. And for me, it was fine because I'd already done it on the TRS-80 Model 1. I knew it could be a good idea, but obviously people otherwise. But otherwise, that aside, it is a good game. There are a few things, though, that I didn't like about it, and I did do a revise the program in 2015, whereby I just luckily hadn't thrown away the source code. I was able to bring it back up and do a few more changes to the game that I always wanted to do. And the number one, or two areas in particular, was that one, the game is keyboard driven, which suited the Color Computer 1 and 2 keyboard layout, but it didn't really suit the Color Computer 3 that came out later. So it was a hard game to start with. It was impossible later on. So I wanted to make it joystick driven. So I added joystick gameplay, which makes all the difference. And I also, if you notice at the very top of the screen where the scores and the readouts and all that, there is text. Now, on the Color Computer 3, that doesn't work in its version of the semi-graphics modes. It could do all the graphic characters fine, but it couldn't do the text. Like at the moment, we're looking at the title screen, and I have a text line down the bottom scrolling away with all the credits. That doesn't work on a Color Computer 3. The Color Computer 3 didn't quite implement the semi-graphics the same way. It's more to do with the fact that it didn't emulate the SAM chip, the synchronous address multiplexer chips, which was needed to go in tandem with the 6847 to create this mode. It created all the graphics, but none of that text. So I wanted to alter it and get rid of the text and actually draw the score on the screen as graphics. And that was the revision. But otherwise, what we're looking at now is the original 1984, my very first Color Computer program, assembly language program on the Color Computer.
Now, I have a question for you, Nick. You mentioned that the game, was fairly complex for people to understand and probably didn't sell well. How did it do in the Model 1 and 3, that version?
It did sell more, but back in those days, I did go to a lot of the clubs and demo it all, and I sold it mainly to people who I demoed it to. As for sales from people who saw it, say, Not that I had a lot of advertising money back then, but if it was ever advertised, people would say, well, what's this about? I don't get it. And it never sold then. So really that was, I should have realized from back then that it was a very, hard to grasp. Well, not hard to grasp, but it was a game that you did have to understand what was going on, to play it. And for a lot of people, they play games for entertainment, not to sit there and learn to have to read a book. So I came to the conclusion that, well, maybe it's just too abstract an idea. And my second game, which I'll talk about another time, was a more Mario type idea where a little character runs on the screen and throws things. People seem to better associate things with that, but this was too abstract. So yeah.
So let me just see if I can kind of surmise one of the things you mentioned though about this. Now Neutroid II, was this sold by Tandy or did you sell this directly yourself?
No. The early this was just myself putting it into a click seal, those little zippy bags, and making up the tapes and going to the local computer clubs and saying, "Hey, look everyone, look how smart I am. You're going to give me some money for it, and that's basically how I sold it. And even my the game after this, Donut Dilemma, was the same until I got lucky and Tandy did sell that. But this one and all my TRS-80 Model 1 games were just sold by me.
Self-published, self-distributed.
Self-published, self-programmed. Most of the games I did back prior, even Donut Dilemma, from Donut Dilemma back, were all original ideas. We're all scared that, if I copy some other game, that's it. I'm going to have some guy in a black suit knock on my door and say, pay up. So I did tend to try to create original ideas, and I found it more fun as well. It's part of the, it's not just showing that you know how to program the assembly language. It was also knowing how to put a game, how to design a game, how to think up of all the game elements, putting that all together so it is a complete game. And that was also part of the challenge, not just copying someone else's game and hoping I can make a buck out of it. Although I did hope to make a buck out of it. But I was trying to do it on my own legs.
But so I want to get back to what we were saying when you were talking about the Defender clone. And now this wasn't sold by Radio Shack, but you would still consider this a commercial title, wouldn't you?
It was very professionally written, and that's what sold me on this mode. I thought, well, hang on, Semigraphics, no one's using it. Why is it bad? And it wasn't until I saw Guardian and I played it, and I was never very good at the arcade game, and I wasn't very good at Guardian either. And that's how I knew it was such a good, well constructed game, because it copied, or it managed to mimic a lot of the gameplay of the original game. Graphically, the sound, it was good. And I thought, well, this Semigraphics mode, why don't more people use it? It's definitely usable. It won't be able to be used in all games. It depends on your game because of the lower horizontal resolution. But as a game programmer, you pick the game and you design the game to suit.
Yeah. So I guess where I was going with the question too is that basically this is, despite some of its limitations, it is capable of producing a commercial quality game, and there are several, as we're going to see when we do this series. There's roughly a dozen that used it, and so as long as the game is designed well and a game is fun to play, the visuals aren't as important as the whole package. And again, these visuals aren't bad, but these visuals are considerably more restrictive than some of the other higher resolution modes of the CoCo. But I mean, I definitely enjoyed playing this game. I enjoyed looking at it. I enjoyed listening to it. I've enjoyed a number of the games that use the semi-graphics modes. And I believe a lot of people will see this and say, this looks very much like an Atari 2600. In most cases, it looks better. And the fact that we had real text mixed in with this and everything else, I believe that even a Semigraphics mode could give an Atari a run for its money. And at the time of when the CoCo 1 came out, they were still two products on the shelf at the same time, so we still were kind of competing with the Atari for television space. And the complexity of the game is, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's not a oversimplified game. So the fact that it's visually as good but a little bit more complex, I believe, gives it, to me, a great play value. So, I mean, I've definitely enjoyed it, and I'm going to enjoy looking at some more of the games that use this graphics mode as well. So, yeah, good job. And we will definitely do a separate video where we'll look at all the versions of Neutroid and a lot of your games. We'll look at the evolution of some of your games from the Model 1 through the Color Computers 1, 2, and 3, and beyond, possibly. So, very cool. Well, thanks for sharing this with us.
Yes, thanks a lot for the explanation of VDG and SAM and all that stuff too.
A lot of technical talk going on in there. And so basically, and again, I'm not super technical in this, but there were two different chips in the Color Computer 1 and 2. One of them was the actual video chip itself, right? That would be called the VDG, the Video Display Generator. But then there was another chip that was called the SAM chip. And from what I've understood from hearing the podcast, the SAM told the VDG what to do. And so you could kind of give it conflicting or overlapping pieces of information and kind of hack the screen to get more on screen than it was intentionally designed to do. Is that a fair statement there?
Yeah, it would be certainly for the Semigraphics mode. Yeah, you couldn't have this mode without the SAM chip if it didn't interfere there. Yeah.
And there were other computers that used the VDD chip. I can't remember the names of them off the top of my head, but they did not have the SAM, and they were not able to do any of these things.
Any of these special modes, mixing modes, basically. So it's kind of a hybrid.
That's right. No SAM, no Semigraphics. That was a feature of the Color Computer 1 and 2.
Great.
And the Dragon.
Sorry.
Right. Well, this is definitely a great way to kickstart a series of games that use Semigraphics, and we are very fortunate to have the author with us of a very cool Semigraphics game for the Color Computer. Nick Marentes, thank you so much for doing that. And Curtis Boyle as well. And I hope you enjoyed this one. We will have more to show you. Until then, thank you all for watching. And we'll see you all later.
See you later.